Good evening or afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another tropical forecast by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And I do apologize for the rather late upload today. I've been quite busy, and overall, I've been looking at a lot of models overall upcoming and leading up to this video so I can have a better forecast. Because right now, a lot is happening, and you're going to about to find out what I mean by that. But let's just say that Fred is now post-tropical, and Grace has now formed, obviously, but it actually decreased in winds in the latest update. So a lot has just happened in the past 20, or at least in the past 12 hours or so. So that's why I'm saying it's going to be a rather long video, and it's definitely going to be a lot of explanations and overall a lot of questions of what is to come here. Because let's just say there's a lot of questions that need to be answered within both of these systems, and it's exactly what I'm going to try to answer throughout this video. So if you guys want to find out more on Grace and obviously post-tropical system Fred and whether it can reform, I recommend you guys watch this video overall, looking at whether we can see two U.S. threats or whether the threats are diminishing. But without further ado, let's get in the forecast. So here's a look at the actual 5-day tropical weather outlook, and I believe this is our latest update. Yep. This is actually 5 p.m. I'm not sure why it says 2 p.m., but at 5 p.m. it actually got decreased to 40 miles an hour. So obviously Grace did form earlier today. I think it was at the 5 a.m. update. I'm not 100% sure, but I did wake up at 8:30 and it was already named. So it most likely around 5 a.m. or maybe even 8 a.m. right before I woke up. But it did get to 45 earlier today at 2 o'clock, and now it's at 40 again. You're probably wondering, why is it actually decreasing in winds? And you're about to find out here. I'm going to show you the latest recon as well, overall, looking at overall IR and visible satellite imagery, showing you why I most likely think that the Grace may or may not just be an open wave. This actually may, I'm not saying this may or may not be a tropical storm. However, I think this is mainly at the moment, without further evidence, I'm gonna say this is most likely going to be an open wave and not really an actual 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. That probably seems like a pretty big thing to say, but I'm going to show you why. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty, which is why I said may or may not. I'm not 100% certain, but recon's about to move into the system very, very soon here. So we will see what that recon shows and whether there is low level circulation and whether it's closed or whether it's just an open way with convection, a ton of convection. But overall, decrease at 40 miles an hour because of a lot of that uncertainty and overall how its structure has really diminished a lot. And pressure is at 1,010 millibars and it is moving now west at 26 miles an hour. And Fred has become post-tropical and has stayed post-tropical for, I believe, a couple advisories now. So why is it that Fred is post-tropical? Well, it's because this thing basically sat over Cuba for over a day, and it's finally back out in the waters in the warm Gulf of Mexico. So I think this will most likely form back to a tropical system very, very soon. But at this point, it's post-tropical as it has now still at 35 miles an hour. I think at this point it may be 30 miles an hour just based on how ugly it looks and how long it was over Cuba. However, we have an interesting track here, an interesting change in track as well for Fred. Due to it moving so far south into Cuba, we have a pretty big change in the actual forecast cone and where this can most likely hit Cuba, or not Cuba, sorry, and most likely hit the Gulf Coast of the United States. So we also have some pretty big updates on Fred, and even though kind of Grace seemed more like a bigger threat than Fred, Fred is starting to become more interesting as we get on. 35 miles an hour, 1,012 millibars, moving west-northwest at 13 miles an hour. So obviously it has slowed down a good bit. And then 90% of development for the next 48 hours and 5 days. So we still have now a 90% for 48 hours. So it's very likely that it's going to form once again. So here's a look here at the actual Fred, or not Fred, sorry, Grace discussion. And here I'm actually gonna read a good amount of the discussion for you guys can get an idea why the National Hurricane Center did decrease it from 45 to 40. So again, Grace was poorly organized. It was a poorly organized system. And it's exactly why I think at this point they either recon actually either went into the wrong glow and that the low level circulation actually relocated further near Guadalupe, which I'll show you guys in a little bit on recon on where they went. But it was very poorly organized. So it's either this thing's an open wave or the low relocated while recon was in mission. But the NOAA Hurricane Center hunters were unable to close off circulation, at least at their flight level at 5,000 feet. But looking at overall, though, from reports in the islands in the Lesser Antilles suggests that there's at least a broad cyclonic circulation at the surface. So again, there could be a chance that there was a rather weak low level circulation, or either they were just in the wrong general area. But based on the data they got, they decreased it to 35 knots, which is basically 40 miles an hour. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty within track here, very complicated track according to the National Hurricane Center. Um, and the center could always reform at any time, especially with convection ongoing farther to the north. So basically, there is a chance it did relocate further to the north. Um, Obviously, let's look at what they have here. So basically, the guidance envelope has made a notable southward shift due to the adjustment of the initial position, and the models insist that Grace will primarily have a west-northwestward heading for much of the forecasted period, with the speed gradually decreasing during the next 48 hours or so. The National Hurricane Track forecast has been shifted southward accordingly, because obviously at that time that looks like the low level circulation did go further southward. That's most likely why they either missed a low level circulation or it's just not there anymore, and it's an open wave. But again, there's a chance that they went too far south and that actually there was relocation further northward. Here's look at the actual forecast position, the actual max wind. So still having a 60-mile peak forecast, and actually having that for around 12 hours or so. So right now, initially 40 miles an hour, expected to go back to 45 and 50. So this thing's still going to be a very interesting storm. So although it may or may not be an open wave, or it may or may not be a very, very disorganized tropical storm, basically subtropical-like looking, it's still going to be a very interesting storm. There is still a very small chance that it could become a hurricane, mainly in the Gulf of Mexico, because it's going to go back in the very warm Gulf of Mexico waters after it goes over Cuba. And again, when I say over Cuba, you're probably wondering, wait, it never showed over Cuba for Grace. Well, that's exactly a big change within this actual forecast, and you're about to see that in a little bit. Now let's go look here at the actual Fred discussion here. So satellite imagery this afternoon shows that a broad and elongated circulation has formed in association with the remnant of Fred, and that the convection has become more concentrated at least east end of the elongated center. And that's because obviously this thing's back over water, and actually based on the actual shear forecast, that there's a better chance we see some more initiation and convection towards the east here. So really watching out for areas in the northeast quadrant to see some pretty good storms developing overall. In the western quadrant, it's really not looking the greatest, really. However, neither the circulation nor the convection are organized enough to justify calling the system a tropical cyclone at this time. So that's still really disorganized as well. The initial motion is still very uncertain. The system is expected to move northwestward around the western overall area of the subtropical ridge, with a turn toward the north expected as the system nears and move inland along the northern Gulf Coast in 48 to 60 hours. Forecast guidance remains in a good agreement on this general scenario, and the new national forecast is close to the the overall model supports, basically, so it's pretty darn close. See overall here, global models are now in a better agreement that the upper level trough over the eastern Gulf of Mexico that has been hindering and the development of Fred will move northward and weaken during the next 24 hours. They also indicate that Fred is likely to reform in well-defined closed circulations. Basically, that trough that we're basically seeing here is going to bring a lot less vertical shear. The upper level trough they're talking about is going to bring a lot less vertical shear as it pushes northward. So overall, it's going to be a lot better for this. For this to possibly become maybe 60 to maybe 65 miles an hour in a very conducive environment. So I still would not rule out the possibility for a rather moderate to strong tropical storm, especially considering this thing is going to be going over some really deep and obviously thick ocean heat content. It's going to be really very interesting how it plays out. They still now have around a 50-mile-an-hour peak, which is actually 10 miles an hour weaker than yesterday, but still a pretty good peak there what they have right now. I think that's still pretty conservative, but since there is no 55, I think that's probably why they put it at 50, but I think 60 and maybe 65 cannot be ruled out. So here's the actual IR forecast on Tropical Storm Grace. And you're probably wondering, how could this thing not be tropical? How can this be a open wave, and how can it possibly not be a tropical storm? Because obviously this thing's most likely a tropical storm at the moment. The thing is, though, there's still a chance that maybe they're low pressure. They're not relocate at the actual time frame they were over the storm. Maybe they did go through the right area and there were the right convection burst, but there was just no LLC, and or it just wasn't really close. So that's exactly why they rather kept it at a tropical storm, because there's way too much uncertainty within this system here. But you can kind of see there is still some good convection. However, a lot of that convection has been eaten up right there towards the north here. A lot of the convection's rapidly dying out as well. There is some decent amount of convection blowing up towards the south here, but that's kind of not really related to the actual low pressure itself. But here's the latest look at the actual main area of convection. So there may be a chance that this low level circulation is actually north of Guadalupe. And that's exactly where we're seeing our latest convection burst. And that is a chance. That's what's going on around the community here. That there's a chance maybe the low relocated northward. And so when recon went down here, where we had the initial area or the initial forecast of the low was further southward from the earlier relocation, that they completely missed the wrong area. And that's why there was no support whatsoever at all for a good LLC or a closed LLC, basically. However, there's a chance that since the new recon will be moving in quite soon here, we may have recon moving this latest area of convection and that pretty large convection burst there, basically around negative 80 degrees Celsius cloud top. So overall, seeing some good development overall, as well as some good amount of lightning. So I think this could very well be an area to watch out for the new relocation. And this may completely change the track here of Grace. We may see it very similar to what it was earlier today, kind of north or a little bit more northward, and kind of avoiding Cuba. But again, as of now, they had pushed the low pressure further southward for Grace. I believe kind of around down here or so, and that's exactly why now all of Cuba is basically in the cone and actually in the direct area of landfall. But overall, that's what we have so far here on IR. So let's actually get a look here at the actual forecast on looking obviously at Grace right now. So here's kind of a look at what it was looking like earlier. So it looks like that the National Hurricane Center kind of went down here where we had that good convection, kind of that convection burst kind of down here. That is kind of where the National Hurricane Center went on the latest recon. See that latest convection burst right there? That's kind of where they were heading, and they kind of went through. They kind of went through like around the general area here. I'm about to show you guys the recon, the actual recon flight. But look at this latest amount of convection burst right here north of Guadalupe. So that's obviously kind of a complete different area than down here, which is most likely why they found nothing. So if it were true that the low pressure, the LLC did relocate over here, that there is a chance that it's very well that the National Hurricane completely missed the wrong area, obviously, and that's most likely why they put it at 40, and that's exactly why they have really no support here on recon, and that was very disorganized. Obviously, it's still pretty disorganized. However, it is a pretty big factor they miss it or not, because obviously it could still very well be 45. It could still really well be a close or more well-defined LLC. But this area of convection right here is very, very interesting. This could very well be the new LLC. And there as well were some westerlies picked up there near Guadalupe. So overall, it's quite interesting what's going on here. And I think the new recon could very well help us and give us a lot more answers to our questions we have right now, especially with that latest downgrade. But it's definitely something very interesting. So here's a look here at the latest recon that we obviously had within Grace. And you can kind of see, look at that. This is really ugly. This is really not a recon you would see within a 45 mile an hour. And obviously we all thought this thing was continuing to strengthen today. So within a 45 and possibly strengthening tropical storm in the Caribbean, you would not think you'd see this in a recon. I mean, only 34 to 40 knots, 10 second flight level wind speed. 10-second wind speed, less than 40 knots at flight level. So that does not even sustain tropical storm winds for the surface, because they were obviously at quite high flight level. I believe they're around 5,000 plus feet there. So obviously this was obviously the big thing here. Where the heck is the LLC, and why is there no longer tropical storm wind support? And here's a look here. So here's the very same time, because you see that came from 2115Z today. Here's a look at 2115Z on satellite. So they kind of went down here in that latest convection burst where they had that relocated low earlier today. They went kind of down here, and that's where the LLC was most likely here. We're kind of watching out for the LLC kind of down here to the very, very, very south of that main convection burst. The thing is, though, that convection burst up here is actually where that LLC may be now. Because if we go all the way now where we are now, you can kind of see that latest convection burst, and that's exactly where this LLC may be at the moment. So as obviously recon was in flight, Obviously took hours to get here, but like hours ahead of recon. Obviously, this is what it was looked like. So obviously, it looked like it could have very well been down here. The LLC. By the time they actually got to the actual system here, what is this? 2115Z. That's yeah, 15Z. They went down here and not up here. So that's why most likely there is no tropical storm wind support and there is no LLC support because they went too far south and not up here north of Guadalupe. Obviously, this last recon, is really not the fault of anybody. However, it's quite misleading here that this new area of convection burst, which most likely could very well be where the LLC is now, that there is no information there, and that because there is no information there, the cone has shifted. And obviously, if the cone shifts once again back to the north, it's going to be extremely, extremely misleading. Obviously, there's obviously going to be a ton of uncertainty. It's quite hard to track this with so much uncertainty, and the location of the LLC just cannot be found. So it's obviously the big thing about the last recon. A new recon is on its route, or it's on the way here. You can kind of see. Actually, I believe it's basically getting towards the actual storm itself here. So you can kind of see it looks like there is a storm getting on the very far outer bands right now. So I will come back to this in the very end of the video and see what they get and gather. So let's now get a look at the actual microwave IR forecast. This can kind of give us a better idea where there's initiation and where there's convection overall, and where we're kind of seeing the actual gradual development here. Looking, obviously, this is brightness temperature. So you can kind of see, let me just wait for this to refresh one more time. So this is actually looking at yesterday, now we're getting back to today. So you can kind of see there was a good amount of convection bursts right there. You can kind of see that's exactly where they got the name Grace, obviously, and now you can kind of see that area of convection, that main area of convection, and possibly the actual low-level circulations further north to where it was earlier on. So there you see that's obviously in the morning when they named it, and now you see it's kind of basically going to be north of Guadalupe there, and it's obviously further south, or obviously it's further north to where actually Recon got the information and got the overall idea that it was quite disorganized at low-level circulation. You kind of see earlier on. This thing can actually go a little bit slower. I'm actually going to get the exact timing here. Wait, so you can kind of see there we saw that convection burst kind of down there, and now obviously it looks like that convection has relocated further northward, which is most likely where we kind of see that confusion there. So actually, now I got to look here at the actual 5 o'clock cone, and you can see that low pressure has really moved very far south. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the actual low pressure is mainly probably up here. That's going to be a big difference because look, if it's up here, we follow the exact same track, it's going to be a completely game changer because that means it stays north of Cuba, a big, big factor. It's basically kind of avoids the main region of Haiti and Dominican Republic there, the lesser mountainous regions. And obviously that means it'll be bringing in more effects for Puerto Rico and a lot more effects for portions of the upper U.S. Virgin Islands. So I think this is very crucial that we actually get an area of low level circulation, because if down the road we stick with this relocation, we go down the road, we get more reconfirmation, and all of a sudden they find the LLC way farther north, where obviously it is now, where obviously, let's say we have recon tomorrow, Sunday, obviously has supposed to be right here, and they fly tomorrow at around 2 or let's say 1 o'clock before the actual advisory, blah, blah, and they find the LLC way up here near Puerto Rico, and that completely game changer last minute. It's exactly what we want to avoid. So it's very important that we actually get crucial information that we need. But overall, we do have tropical storm warnings right now still for Puerto Rico and portions of the northern Leeward Islands there and just near areas of Guadalupe. And obviously, we now have tropical storm watches for portions of eastern Dominican Republic. So looking at, like I said, it's going to be going through the middle of Hispaniola and all of Cuba. And this is obviously not what we had earlier in the past advisories. Actually, it was further northward. So it's basically taking a very similar Fred track. And obviously, we saw what happened to Fred, became post-tropical. However, even if this low pressure is correct, this location, it does this track. And obviously, the chance for a hurricane really, really decreases a lot. It'll have a ton of Gulf of Mexico water time, and that means it's going to go through a lot of that deep ocean heat content. So if it were to come out of Cuba at around 40 or 45 miles an hour, I would definitely not rule out the possibility for a hurricane to form even the Gulf of Mexico. So I think either way, a hurricane cannot be ruled out. Here's like the 18Z tracks, and here's the latest look. So you see a ton, and there's a ton of uncertainty. See, obviously that's where Tropical Tidbits has that low, pretty far south to where it's expected to be, and that's why other tracks are very, very, very far south of Puerto Rico. So you can see the majority are taking it like this, a very similar approach like this. So if this were to this is kind of the mean of the actual guidances. So at this point, we were really watching out for Louisiana and Mississippi. However, if it's further northward, and it's actually likely where I think it's going to go, that's going to probably be a bigger threat for Alabama and as well even southern Florida. But we as well have a lot of models kind of taking it due westward, basically west northwestward, and basically hitting Jamaica and going straight for Cancun. So we have a massive area of uncertainty from Key West to legit the Cancun region. I mean, who would have thought we'd see so much uncertainty within this system? I mean, that's just crazy uncertainty. Here's a look at the latest intensity guidance, and you kind of see we have a pretty big spike, and this is obviously before this became back to 40 miles an hour. So I think 0Z is going to look very, very different. But you can kind of see the majority want to have this to a high-end tropical storm within 36 hours, then weakening rapidly back to a moderate to weak tropical storm because of land interaction, and then kaboom, back in the Gulf of Mexico. So either way, even if the location is true or not, I think this still has a pretty good chance to be very interesting here in the Gulf of Mexico. Even if it hits Key West or even if it goes through Cuba, this either way still has a pretty good chance to be, or it has a possibility to still become a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. I think the chance for a Category 2 would decrease rapidly, and maybe at 75, maybe borderline tropical storm hurricanes possible. But I think overall, everything's really interesting here. But here's as well a look here at Tropical Storm Fred, or not Tropical Storm Fred, post-Tropical Storm Fred. And here's a look at the 5 p.m. update, and you can see there's been a massive western shift here within the actual forecast. Now looking at a landfall near Mobile, and as well Gulfport, Mississippi. They're right in the Alabama and Mississippi border. Looking at landfall for possibly as a tropical storm, and the peak forecast is 50 miles an hour. However, I think there is a chance it could very well be 50, considering how slow it's moving over the waters, and how deep the ocean heat content is, and how warm the waters are, and how obviously that trough is expected to move further northward, so there is going to be a lot less vertical shear. So overall, it's pretty conducive an environment, and I think, well, it is 35 now. Let's say it gets back to 40 tomorrow, which is expected. There's an easy chance it could very well get nearly 60 miles an hour. So I think that's very, very interesting. But overall, watching out for Alabama and Mississippi. The main area to really watch out for will be the Pensacola region, not Panama City, Destin, that region of the Northeast Quadrant. We could see some more initiation toward the actual eastern half than the western half. So if you're in Louisiana, including New Orleans or Biloxi or that general region, you really shouldn't have to worry about, even though you're going to be very, very close to the actual landfall. Intensity guidance here, the majority kind of having it. Oh, this is actually 12Z. Let's go back to 18Z. So 18Z, very similar. So you can kind of see, looking at a tropical storm within the next 12 hours or so, maybe a little bit less, but the majority have it kind of anywhere from probably 45 knots to possibly from 50 knots, which is basically obviously going to be closer to 60 miles an hour. So there is still a chance this could very well get to 60, and I would not rule that out of the possibility considering the conditions. And let's go look at the actual tracks, and they've kind of more aligned with the National Hurricane Center, watching out for areas like Mobile. Looks like Mobile and Pensacola could get hit quite hard. Obviously, this is very different than the initial forecast early on, which was kind of like this. Obviously, this was the initial forecast, where it was kind of like that, actually. And now it's really shifted westward, so a lot less impact for Tallahassee, Georgia, and now really watching out for areas like Alabama, Mississippi, western Florida, and obviously it's going to go further up into the central United States. And this is actually a look at the latest 18Z forecast on the GFS. And let me just tell you, I just can't explain. I mean, let me just go through it and you guys can just look at that. I mean, because of the lack of information, the recon, the GFS wants to have Grace go into the Bay of Campeche. They want to have it do this. They want to have it legit do this, which is nowhere close to what any of the other global models are having. So I think these 18Z model runs are going to be extremely misleading and I think extremely inaccurate because we really don't know where the LLC is, really. I mean, I think I have an idea where it is. The National Hurricane Center really somewhat, they think they have an idea where it is, but further southward, I mean, everything about this storm is extremely misleading, and there's really we can't say anything within Grace with actual certainty because there's just so much that has to be answered, especially within the latest update. Downgrading it, and they obviously had that low pressure pretty far south to where I think it is. So I think this new recon's gonna really help out. I think by that point, 0Z and 6Z will become more reliable if we get an actual idea on recon. But here's what they actually have it going far south of Puerto Rico, only 1,011 millibars going into portions of actually going south. They have it going south of Hispaniola. I mean, completely south of it. I mean, I just don't understand the GFS really at this point. And they have it completely dying out and then coming back and possibly forming again. I just don't understand. The 12Z, though, I wouldn't say the 12Z was any better, but the track was more reasonable. I mean, look at the 12Z. I mean, look how big the difference is between the 12Z and the 18Z GFS. Consider 12Z obviously was about way before the recon, obviously, and they have it kind of going through Puerto Rico and north of the Hispaniola. This is where 12Z had it kind of going like this, and now 12Z or not 18Z has it legit going completely south of Hispaniola. And this is not look like a big difference, maybe 100 miles, but this with that and then this is a pretty big difference if you ask me. I mean, that's a pretty big difference if you ask me. So that's that. I mean, that's that. I mean, and look, obviously the strength of 12Z makes no sense. I mean, yeah, I know that, but the actual track is somewhat reasonable. I don't think it's gonna go to Texas, but you know what I mean. Obviously, near the Bahamas and Florida, that's reasonable. But the 18Z, I just really do not know. But 18Z with Fred, they have it at 1,000 millibars, so that's actually quite interesting. They actually have it being a bit stronger. So that's something interesting. We could very well see something very interesting with Fred, with 12Z. The CMC here, here's like the 12Z CMC, and actually the 12Z CMC is I wouldn't say it's reasonable, but I think it's the most reasonable model we have so far. I think 0Z CMC may do the very funny, and if the CMC takes it to Babecam PG, I really have no idea what to say. But CMC is kind of very similar with the GFS has as of now, but with Fred, obviously. But look at the CMC. I think the CMC is quite reasonable. I mean, I wouldn't say the strength is reasonable. I mean, obviously, 981 for Key Largo isn't the most reliable. But I mean, the location and track, I think, is the most reasonable out of all the malls we have so far. They have 973 there for areas of Biloxi and obviously Mobile, which is basically maybe a low-end category 1, or sorry, low-end category 2, sorry, or mid-category 2, depending the actual wind forecast. To actually see the actual winds. Yeah, they have it rather weak here. Yeah, the CMC has it rather weak. Let's actually go closer and zoomed in here. Yeah, they have it. Yeah, this is basically a mid and high-end category 1 there, even though it has extremely low pressure. But I mean, that's just, I really don't know what to say here. The vorticity on the 18Z. I mean, let's actually look at the 18Z vorticity and see what that says. I don't know what to say about this, really, if I'm being completely honest. So look, they have a pretty good vorticity right now at the 18Z. And then they just completely kill it. I mean, just like that. And actually some good vorticity, though, on Fred. Not gonna lie. The H-Warp here for 18Z is actually coming out. I've actually not checked the 18Z H-Warp yet. It's actually only 18 hours out. But let's see what they have 18 hours out. So in 18 hours, let's see what the H-Warp has. The H-Warp, taking it, let's see here. Actually, the H-Warp may or may not be rather accurate as of now. They may take it still pretty far south of Puerto Rico. However, they do have the area of low somewhat closer than the other models. I guess you could say that they kind of have it still kind of right here. So I think rather it's going to be more up here. But it's definitely interesting here. The new H4, obviously, I would wait for this to fully come out. However, this video would come out very late if I did. But that's what the ACZ has out so far. The 12Z though, let me go to the 12Z. And the 12Z, you can kind of see it. There's a big northern difference here. Look at the 12Z, far north of Guadalupe there, and they have it now here for 18Z, while it was up here now for 12Z. So there's a huge south relocation within these 18Z runs, and I believe by 0Z runs for a year and CMC will be very similar to the 18Z runs we see now. But look at that. Obviously, it still took it south of Puerto Rico. However, I mean, it's still more reasonable than what the GFS is showing now here. They actually have it going through portions of eastbound NOAA love it. However, the H4, the 12Z is still very unreasonable because they want it as a major hurricane hitting Cancun, which I do not see at all. And here's look at the H4 here for Fred. The 18Z, let me actually refresh. Like I said, I'm not really going to look the 18Z yet for Fred. Now 21 hours out, and they actually want to have it still rather be quite weak for the next 18 hours or 21 hours or so. But definitely very interesting. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And actually, I almost forgot. Let's go see what Recon has. So here's a look here what the latest Recon is showing here for Fred, obviously. So there is no Recon going into Grace, but there is a Recon going into Fred right now. So actually, oops, that's the wrong thing I was looking at. I was looking at the trade winds for a second there, but let's now look at the actual Recon itself. So 1,015 millibars with the latest actual latest minimal center pressure there in the environment. You can kind of see we are looking at overall in the surface winds basically around 25 knots or so. So basically looking at around 30-ish miles an hour or so. This thing is starting to move into the actual main area of convection, so we will get a better idea if it does get into the actual area of low circulation, or whether there actually is or if there actually is low circulation, because obviously it said they're very disorganized and basically little circulation whatsoever in Fred. However, it's right now around 30-ish miles an hour is basically what they found. And surface so far, it's obviously surface winds. And let's get a look here what they're actually seeing again for flight level. They're basically getting around similar as well, around 25 knots. So overall, let's actually get a look here at where they are actually flying. So at the actual level, they have 1,013 millibars, but since there's 21 knots there of wind, you're going to want to take a millibar for each 10 knots. So there's basically around 1,011 millibars basically right there where they are at the moment. Basically, that's kind of what we're getting. The actual pressure itself, though,